on the chessboard right now. It looks like he could get us into a war. Listen to clip 6.
Vladimir Putin's statements to the press there in the last few hours that these are neo-Nazis and anti-Semites, and still denies that it's Russian troops.
Well, let's stop right there. Now, that was on Fox News, and the empty skirt just went and refixed her lipstick. But we know, as a fact of reality, there are Ukrainian nationalists who are neo-Nazis or sympathizers. Let's clear that up, Mr. Watson. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, Time magazine put out a report about a week ago saying the same thing as McCain, that there were no neo-Nazis in Kiev. Yet BBC News and others have broadcast footage of literal columns of armed militants wearing SS armbands, in homage, of course, to the Waffen-SS, marching through Kiev armed. And now, as I said, they've been given 3 top positions within the government. So not only are there neo-Nazis patrolling the streets of Kiev, they're actually being given positions of power under the umbrella of this fascist Svoboda party.
How in the world could this be buried by the world? Well, I shouldn't ask what I know to be true. The world press is a propaganda machine, and during the 1999 bombing of Kosovo, although every bridge on the Danube was blown up by Bill Clinton's repainted NATO under General Wesley Clark, not one picture ever appeared of one bridge being blown up on the Danube River. Not one picture by the world press. I mean, the same thing is going on here, Paul.
Well, they routinely underplay it, don't they? I mean, we saw what happened in Syria, where years ago the Council on Foreign Relations, which again is a front for the State Department, was openly calling for the U.S. to side with Al-Qaeda. Then we saw John McCain actually visit Syria and meet with Al-Qaeda-linked militants. So time and time again, these fascists, these extremist forces are being backed by elements of the U.S. government.
But why is it John McCain, who was always on the front lines with these crazy elements, what is he doing? Who is he working for?
He's working for the Council on Foreign Relations, basically. That's who I see as the head of the Hydra behind this, because they've been calling for this for years. So,
who Leslie Gelb and his friends?
Sorry?
Leslie Gelb and his friends at the CFR?
Leslie Gelb, of course, Hillary Clinton joked that she would only have to walk down the street to get her orders from the CFR because it's so close to the State Department building in Washington, D.C. So these are the crooks that are behind this. They were behind it in Syria, and they're behind it again in Ukraine.
Where does this go? Paul Joseph Watson of Prison Planet. You write articles that I read all the time because they're very insightful. They're very well researched. You know more about this than I do. Can you take a guess where this is going?
It's going to end up with the partition of Ukraine. Whether that turns into a Berlin Wall situation, it's anybody's guess. But, of course, the danger in that, even though a lot of the rhetoric we're hearing from Kerry and Obama is hot air, as per usual, there's no teeth behind it, the danger is that we're going to see a confrontation that could explode this out of control. We saw the footage today of the Ukrainian soldiers marching up to the Russian-held base where the Russian troops fired warning shots in the air. They had actual missile launchers trained on these Ukrainian troops. So aside from the larger geopolitical play, we could have an incident which could spark a hot war within the Ukraine, and that's the big risk.
So in other words, a war could begin almost by accident in this situation.
It's so easy for that to happen. It's unbelievable.
You know, this reminds me of the guns of August 1917. I've said this repeatedly. World War I was a war that started almost by accident in a very similar manner, again over an incident in the Balkans, or related to the Balkans. It was a tinderbox, and one world power threatened the other, one dared the other, and then they were sort of dragged into it based on an ego game. I see a very similar element here. Is that an irrational analysis, or do you think there are comparabilities here?
I think it's entirely comparable, and the fact that World War I, 100 years ago, started on much less of a pretext than some of the footage we've seen even today out of Ukraine is chilling, to say the least. And this goes into deep state politics. This is way above the teleprompter reader Obama. And as you said, any kind of confrontation, which we saw today, could spark this into something that gets quickly out of control. So while Putin's trying to call Obama's bluff in the short term, and this rhetoric about sanctions is largely hot air from what I can see, it could quickly be taken out of their hands and turn into a hot war situation.